Welcome to Dreamer's Realm, where stories whisper you to sleep. Lost in the endless ocean, in the heart of a shimmering blue world, where sunbeams pour down like golden threads through endless water, a tiny spark of orange darted between the swaying tendrils of sea anemones. His name was Finnie, small and bright as a flicker of laughter. Finnie was a clownfish, his body the color of ripe tangerine, striped in white like waves of joy, each band outlined with the ink of twilight. His fins fluttered gently, like petals on the breeze, allowing him to dance nimbly through the ocean's hidden gardens. There was something in his movement, light, curious, a little clumsy, that made you want to smile. He looked as if he had been drawn by a child's dream. And perhaps, in a way, he had. This wasn't a journey about bravery, or treasure, or glory. No, Finnie's story was far more delicate than that. It was a tale of losing your way and learning, ever so slowly, how to come home again. His home, his true home, was nestled deep in a coral reef, tucked safely among the arms of a sea anemone. It was there, in the shelter of stinging tendrils that did not sting him, that he had been born. He was coated in a silken shield, nature's little miracle, which let him live in harmony with a creature that most feared. The anemone protected him, and he, in return, protected it. That bond was sacred. It was the kind of belonging you could feel in your bones. But one day, a current too strong carried him far away. The reef, the anemone, the quiet rhythm of home, all vanished behind ripples and time. Now, he was adrift in the wide blue unknown, surrounded by silence and secrets. And yet, not everything was lost, because even in the vastest sea, a heart that remembers home will always find a way. And Finnie, with his wide eyes and restless fins, was ready to begin. This is not just the story of a fish. It's the story of returning, of listening, of letting go, of floating towards something that's been waiting for you all along. Come now, let the waves carry you. The journey begins. Chapter 1, The Sunken Ship and the Wise Old Guardian of the Sea. The sea had grown still, not the kind of stillness that feels empty, but the kind that holds its breath, like something ancient was listening. Finnie, the little clownfish with the bright orange body and stripes of white outlined in black, drifted slowly forward. His rounded fins fluttered gently. Cautious and quiet, he had never ventured this far from his coral reef before. The water here was cooler, deeper, and the light above had softened into silvery shafts that slipped through the blue like sleepy sunbeams. It was then that he saw it. A shape loomed ahead, half buried beneath a sloping bed of sand and seaweed. At first, it looked like a dark hill, But as Finnie swam closer, details emerged: splintered beams, tangled ropes, rusted lanterns dangling from broken railings. A ship, or rather, the bones of one. Time had taken it apart with quiet grace. Sea moss crept along the ribs of the vessel. Coral clung like forgotten lace, and sea stars rested undisturbed on its planks. The ship lay on its side, its frame creaking softly as if it still remembered the wind that once pushed it across the waves. Finnie's heart beat faster. He wasn't sure if it was excitement or fear. There was something mysterious about the shipwreck, as though it carried memories too big for him to understand. He hovered near a shattered window. Inside, light poured in through the cracks. Illuminating treasure chests burst open by age. Strings of dull pearls floated like jellyfish, and gold coins, green with time, rested beside soggy books with curled leather covers. Finnie swam closer, enchanted. On one open page, he saw faint ink lines, names, perhaps, or a song. He couldn't read them, but he felt their weight like a whisper through the water. Something about this place felt sacred. A shadow moved. Startled, Finnie darted behind a piece of coral-encrusted debris, peeking out with wide eyes. The shadow was vast. At first, he thought the ship was shifting, groaning beneath its own weight. But then, from the far side of the wreck, a shape glided into view, slow, immense, graceful. It was a sea turtle, but not like any Finnie had ever seen. This one was enormous, easily the size of a small boat. His shell was unlike the hard domes of other turtles. It was dark, leathery, and ridged like the surface of a sleeping mountain. Across his back, pale white speckles shimmered faintly, twinkling like distant stars. His flippers moved with quiet dignity, and his head turned slowly toward Finnie, eyes deep and steady, like the sea itself. Finnie felt all his fear dissolve. The turtle said nothing at first. He merely blinked once, then resumed his slow swim around the perimeter of the wreck. His presence was so calm, so deeply rooted, it seemed as if he had always been there. Without knowing why, Finnie followed him. They glided together through the broken frame of the ship, passing barnacle-covered railings and fish that darted in and out of old portholes. As they moved, the turtle finally spoke, his voice a low murmur that echoed through the water. She was a proud vessel, he said, carried dreams on her decks and stars in her sails. Finnie tilted his head, listening. There was a time, the turtle continued, when laughter rang through her hulls. The crew sang in the storm and told stories beneath lantern light. Some of them longed for home, some chased horizons, some never finished their journeys. He paused beside a broken compass lying on the sand. The needle spun aimlessly. Now, the turtle said, they rest, but nothing truly vanishes in the ocean. The sea remembers everything. Finnie stared at the compass, then up at the turtle. Who are you? The turtle turned toward him, his eyes kind and ancient. I have many names, he said, but here, They simply call me the Keeper." Finnie's fins twitched. "Why do you stay here?" The Keeper let out a deep, slow breath, sending bubbles spiraling upward. "Because this place needs remembering. Not for sorrow, but for what it meant. Every plank, every tear, every laugh, they're part of a story. Stories should not be forgotten." They drifted toward a collapsed staircase where sea anemones bloomed like underwater flowers. The Keeper paused, his great shadow stretching over the steps. "Do you know why you're here, little one?" Finnie hesitated. "I got lost. That's one way of saying it," the Keeper replied, with a trace of amusement in his voice. "Or maybe you were meant to find something." Finnie looked at the ship, then back at the wise old turtle. "I just want to go home," he said softly. The turtle's gaze deepened. "Home is more than a place. It's the place where your spirit rests, where your heart is known. You may find your way by swimming or by remembering who you are." A gentle silence fell between them. Then the Keeper gestured with one flipper toward a beam of sunlight falling on a small box wedged in the sand. Finnie swam over to it. The lid had been broken, and inside lay a collection of trinkets, buttons, a silver locket, a child's marble. They left behind more than dreams. The Keeper said they left pieces of themselves, and now the sea holds them all. Finnie looked again at the ship, not as a ruin, but as a resting place, a monument. He thought of his own home, of the coral reef glowing in the daylight, of the sea anemone that danced like a living curtain. He missed it deeply, achingly. "Do you ever miss your home?" Finnie asked. "I carry it with me," said the turtle, "everywhere I go." The words settled over Finnie like soft sand. He didn't know what to say, but he knew he wanted to remember this place forever. The way the light touched the timbers, the way the ship sighed beneath the sea, the way the turtle's shell glimmered like the night sky. At last, the Keeper turned toward the open water. "Your journey is far from over, little Finnie," he said, "but you're not alone. The sea watches, and the stars wait." Finnie looked at him one last time. "Will I see you again?" The turtle smiled. "Perhaps, or perhaps you'll find others who carry pieces of the same wisdom." Finnie swam close, brushing a grateful swirl of bubbles across the Keeper's side. "Thank you." The old turtle nodded once, slow, dignified, then drifted back toward the heart of the wreck, where memories swam like shadows, and silence kept them safe. Finnie turned toward the blue beyond. He didn't know exactly where he was going, but something inside him felt steadier now, a little braver, a little lighter. With a flick of his fins, he slipped into the current, carrying with him the stories of a sunken ship, the voice of a turtle, and the gentle reminder that sometimes even the lost can carry light. And far behind him, the ship stood quietly, neither broken nor forgotten, but sacred, a cathedral beneath the waves. Finnie's journey had just begun. Chapter 2: The Hermit Crab's Shell Gallery. The current was gentle that day, like a breeze woven through water. After parting ways with the old sea turtle and the dreams of the sunken ship, Finnie swam on in thoughtful silence, his little fins catching the light like orange petals. The ocean had grown warmer now, a soft turquoise hue dancing beneath layers of filtered sunlight. Grains of sand shimmered below, shifting in delicate swirls that seemed to murmur secrets just beyond hearing. Finnie wasn't quite sure where he was going, only that he needed to keep moving. Home still felt far away, a warm memory tucked somewhere in the coral thickets of his heart. But the sea had begun to feel less intimidating and more like a story that was waiting to be read. One page at a time, it was then, just beyond a small ridge of coral, that he noticed something strange. The ocean floor dipped into a shallow basin, and in its center, a soft whirl of sand was spiraling slowly, as though the sea itself had been stirring a spoon in the ocean's teacup. Within that swirl sat a tiny figure, barely noticeable at first, hunched low and still. Finnie crept closer. It was a crab, not just any crab, but a hermit crab, wrapped snugly in a glistening spiral shell. Its beady eyes blinked from the end of two long stalks, and one oversized claw rested protectively over the entrance to its shell home. The crab didn't move as Finnie approached, only eyed him curiously, as though weighing his intentions. Around it, to Finnie's amazement, lay dozens, perhaps hundreds, of seashells. They weren't scattered haphazardly like drifted debris. No, each one had been placed deliberately, lovingly, in a perfect semicircle, fanned out like the rays of a star. There were tall, spiraled shells in glowing amber, tiny porcelain white cones, ridged rose-tinted spirals, aquamarine turrets that glowed faintly in the dappled light, and even one that looked like it had been dipped in molten gold. Finnie blinked. "Is this your collection?" The hermit crab finally stirred, lifting his larger claw slightly. "Indeed," he said, his voice raspy but kind. "Each one is a chapter of my life." Finnie tilted his head, fascinated. The crab scuttled slowly toward a green and pink shell, polished smooth by time. "This one," he said, "was the first shell I ever moved into. I outgrew it quickly, of course, but I kept it. It reminds me of the days when even a pebble felt enormous." He moved on to another. "This one was found after a storm. Took me 3 days to reach it. Worth every grain of sand in my claws." Finnie circled, wide-eyed. "They're beautiful, but why keep them all?" The hermit crab chuckled, a sound like clicking coral. "Because they are me, or rather, they were. Each shell held me for a while, protected me, became my home, my shield, my secret, and when I grew, I left. But I didn't forget." He turned toward Finnie. "I think creatures like us, small ones, must carry our stories differently. We don't leave grand ruins behind, or cities of stone. We leave shells." Finnie thought of the sunken ship, its dreams still floating in the dust of the sea. He thought of the turtle's words, "The sea remembers everything." The crab gestured to an empty shell with a broken edge. Not every change is easy. Sometimes the next shell isn't perfect. Sometimes we must wait, or risk, or wander far. But growing means we must leave behind what no longer fits. Finnie drifted lower, watching as light danced across the collection. He could see now that many of the shells had tiny marks. Scratches, chips, even barnacle growths. They weren't flawless, but that made them feel more alive. "Did you decorate them?" Finnie asked, noticing one shell adorned with strands of seaweed and a cluster of delicate pearls. "Of course," the crab replied, clearly pleased. "A home should reflect the one who lives inside. When I wear a shell, I make it mine. Sometimes it's for camouflage. Other times, it's just because it feels good to be surrounded by things I find beautiful." He lifted his big claw thoughtfully. "The world may be vast, and many may pass us by without noticing, but that doesn't mean we must hide who we are." Finnie swirled gently in place. "I think that's brave." The crab laughed again. "Perhaps, or perhaps it's just honest." They sat in silence for a while, Finnie and the crab, surrounded by a halo of memories cast in mother of pearl and polished stone. A school of tiny blue fish passed by, each one glinting like sapphires. In the distance, a spire of coral bloomed like a frozen firework. "Have you ever gotten stuck in the wrong shell?" Finnie asked. The crab's eyes twitched with amusement. "Oh yes, once I picked a shell too heavy. Couldn't move more than a few inches before flopping sideways like a rock. Another time, I chose one that had a tiny hole in the back. I didn't notice until it was too late, and a shrimp made itself at home in there with me. Very awkward housemate." Finnie giggled, imagining the scene. "But I learned," the crab continued. "Each mistake made me wiser. Each odd fit taught me how to look more carefully next time. There's no shame in changing your shell. Little one, it doesn't mean you're leaving yourself behind. It means you're caring for who you are now." Finnie let that thought wash over him like a warm current. He had been drifting, afraid of losing his place in the world, afraid that being far from home meant being lost. But here was a creature who changed homes many times and still carried his sense of self like a lantern in the dark. "Do you ever miss the old ones?" Finnie asked. "Of course," said the crab, "but I keep them near. They whisper to me, remind me of who I was, and how far I've come." He paused. "And someday, I'll leave even this one. That's the rhythm of life, isn't it? Grow, shift, carry on. It's not always easy, but it's always necessary." Finnie looked once more at the gallery. This undersea museum of lives lived in spirals. He felt something inside him steady, like a fin adjusting to a new current. "Thank you," he said softly. "I think I understand now." The crab nodded. "Then my work here is done." Finnie smiled. "I hope you find a beautiful next shell, and I hope you find your way home." said the crab. With one last loop around the shell gallery, Finnie gave the crab a swirl of bubbles, a goodbye, a blessing, a small thank you carried on the tide. Then he turned, fins fluttering with a quiet confidence, and swam back into the open blue. Behind him, the hermit crab returned to his spiral nest, carefully adjusting a row of tiny conch shells, whistling a tune only the sand would remember. And ahead of Finnie, the ocean opened once more, wide, shimmering, full of stories yet to be told. Chapter 3: The Colorful Realm of the Peacock Mantis Shrimp. The sea was shifting again. After leaving the swirling sands and the thoughtful hermit crab, Finnie found himself moving into a different rhythm of the ocean, one that sparkled and pulsed with light, like music turned into color. The further he swam, the more vivid everything became. Gone were the muted blues and mirthy tones of the seafloor. Here, the coral reefs rose like enchanted castles, glowing in coral pinks, velvet purples, and electric oranges. The light poured through the surface above, refracted by the water and the coral into soft rainbows that danced across everything they touched. Finnie slowed, his wide eyes drinking it all in. Tiny fish flickered past like brush strokes. Fans of coral waved like silken scarves. The water shimmered with layers of warmth and brilliance, and in the center of it all, moving like a living spark, was a creature unlike any Finnie had ever seen. It zipped across the reef with dazzling speed, its movements sharp and graceful, like a flash of lightning painted in color. One moment it was beneath a ledge, the next it had reappeared in a burst of shimmering green and gold. Its body was sleek and armored, its shell covered in bands of teal, crimson, violet, and sunlit bronze, as though a rainbow had folded itself into the shape of a shrimp. Finnie blinked. Whoa! The creature halted mid-motion, its large, bulbous eyes swiveling on their stalks to study him, each eye split into 3 parts, and it felt, at least to Finnie, that he was being examined from several dimensions all at once. "You're new," said the creature, its voice quick and crisp, like chimes tapped by the wind. "I'm Finnie," said the little clownfish. "I'm looking for home." The shrimp blinked, which was a curious thing to watch. A seeker, then, "Follow me, but keep up." And with that, it vanished again, only to reappear a moment later, upside down, spiraling through a shaft of refracted light. Finnie chased after it. As he swam, colors wrapped around him like silk. The shrimp, who introduced himself as Prism, led Finnie through coral corridors, up ridges, into caverns, and out again through arches formed by ancient sea fans. Each space was filled with something new, a garden of jelly-like creatures that glowed like lanterns. a field of snails with glass-like shells, a tunnel where light played tricks and made everything look like it was upside down. Everywhere, Finnie could feel Prism's presence as a blur of motion and hue. Darting, swirling, shifting. "You're fast," Finnie called out, spinning to keep up. Prism reappeared at his side. "I have to be. Speed is part of who I am." Finnie tilted his head. "But why?" They stopped beside a hollow in the coral where Prism's home appeared. A strange little den filled with shards of shell, polished pebbles, and what looked like artwork. "Sometimes," Prism said, his voice softer now, "being small means being underestimated. But I'm not just small. I'm swift, precise. I can strike harder than a creature 20 times my size." Finnie swam closer, intrigued. "You mean like a punch?" Prism chuckled. "Exactly like a punch. In fact, my strike is one of the fastest movements in the ocean, faster than the blink of a fish's eye." He raised one of his powerful front limbs, broad and shielded like a gauntlet. "With this, I can crack open shells, defend my home, even stun prey with a shock wave. But I don't fight for fun, only when I must." Finnie looked at the den, now noticing the care with which everything had been placed. Each shell was set at a specific angle. Colored pebbles lined the edges like tiles in a mosaic. There was something almost artistic about it. "Did you make all this?" Prism nodded. "It helps me think, helps me see. I see more than most." Finnie remembered the shrimp's eyes, how they turned and split and shimmered with layers he couldn't begin to understand. "You see colors we can't, don't you? Ultraviolet, polarized light, shades you can't even name," Prism said with a quiet pride. "It's like hearing a song in a room full of silence. It changes how you experience everything." They sat there for a moment, surrounded by Prism's world. "You're not just a fighter," Finnie said at last. "You're an artist." Prism's antennae twitched in pleasure. "I suppose I am. Most creatures don't stay long enough to notice." Finnie thought of his own journey, of the shipwreck, the wise turtle, the thoughtful crab, and now, this dreamlike reef and its radiant guardian. Each friend was so different, yet each had given him something he didn't know he was looking for. "I think I was meant to meet you," Finnie said gently. "Perhaps," Prism replied, "or perhaps you're becoming more yourself with each place you visit." There was something true in that, something Finnie couldn't quite put into words. "Would you like to see something?" Prism asked, darting suddenly toward a crack in the reef. Finnie followed, curious. They entered a dome of coral with a mirrored ceiling of water above. Prism moved to the center and, with a sudden burst of motion, flipped and spun, his limbs flashing in every direction. The light caught him and exploded. Colors erupted in every direction. Teal, magenta, amber, violet. Finnie couldn't believe his eyes. The shrimp's movements formed spirals, starbursts, echoes of light that shimmered like fireworks without sound. It was beautiful, mesmerizing, like a dance. A story, a dream unfolding in motion. When Prism stopped, the water slowly settled. Finnie exhaled, dazed. That was a performance. Prism said, a memory made visible. Sometimes I express things through movement that I can't explain in words. I've never seen anything like it. Prism's eyes softened. That's the thing about the ocean. It's full of things we've never seen before. You just have to keep going. Finnie nodded, his heart glowing. I should go, he said. I still have a long way to swim. Prism drifted closer. Then take this with you. He plucked a tiny, shining shard of opalescent shell from his collection and placed it before Finnie. It will catch the light when you feel lost. Just a reminder that color and wonder are never far away. Finnie bowed his fins in gratitude. Thank you, Prism. Thank you, Prism replied. Not many paused to see the beauty before rushing past it. With one last glance at the shimmering reef, Finnie turned and swam onward, carrying the shard, the colors, and the quiet wisdom of a shrimp who saw the world not just in light, but in possibility. Behind him, the coral glowed like a cathedral of color, and ahead, the ocean, waiting, with new hues still unseen. Chapter 4: The Mushroom Village and the Narwhal Gatekeeper. The sea grew colder. Finnie could feel it on his fins. A hush in the water, a stillness that whispered of great depth and quiet mystery. The coral colors had faded behind him, replaced now by shadows and stone. He had wandered far, swimming through soft darkness, deeper than he had ever gone before. The water here was not threatening, just ancient. There was no coral, no fish, no swaying plants, only smooth rock formations and a hushed blue dimness, as if the ocean itself had paused to listen. A slow current stirred the sand like drifting smoke, and above, the surface was so distant it may as well have been the sky. Finnie drifted slowly, his bright orange body glowing faintly against the blue-black background. That was when he saw it. A great stone archway stood before him, carved not by tools but by time and wonder. The arch was draped in shadow, and it seemed to hum softly, like a forgotten lullaby. Two massive slabs of rock formed the gate, impossibly tall, edges jagged, coated with a fine shimmer like stardust sunk to the bottom of the sea. Finnie swam closer. The archway pulsed faintly with light, but nothing beyond it could be seen. It was as though the space behind the gate led not to another part of the sea, but to a dream. He tried to pass through, but as he approached, the water around him thickened, not like a current pushing him back, but like a gentle wall of resistance. Cool, unseen, unyielding, he paused, uncertain. Is this the end? Suddenly, the darkness shifted. A shape emerged from the gloom, smooth and large, gliding in silence. At first, Finnie thought it might be a whale, but then the soft glow of light caught it. A single spiraling horn, long and thin, extended from the creature's head like a twist of moonlight. A narwhal. Its body was silver gray, speckled with pale spots, and its movements were slow, deliberate, like a being not quite of this world. The spiraled tusk extended forward, catching the faint light like an ancient crystal. Finnie froze, awestruck. The narwhal's large, gentle eye turned toward him. It didn't speak, not with words, but Finnie felt it, like a soft voice brushing the inside of his thoughts. "Are you ready to cross?" Finnie blinked. I don't know." The narwhal drifted forward, and the ocean around them seemed to hush even more. "This place is not dangerous." The narwhal's voice continued in Finnie's heart. "Only unknown. You must want to step into wonder, not rush through it." "I'm looking for home," Finnie whispered. "Then you will need more than direction. You'll need trust." And with that, the narwhal lowered its spiraled horn and gently pressed it to the center of the stone archway. A soft sound rang out, like a bell heard underwater, and the gate shimmered. Lines of light glowed along the stone, forming veins of silver and blue. Then, with a low, echoing hum, the gate opened, not with movement, but with transformation. The darkness behind the arch dissolved into light. Finnie swam forward slowly, hesitantly. He passed through the shimmer, and the world changed. It was as if he had entered a fairy tale. Before him lay a vast underwater valley, nestled between cliffs of smooth stone, and rising from the sea floor were enormous mushrooms. No, not mushrooms, but mushroom-shaped homes. Each one glowed softly, its cap shimmering with light like dew caught in moonbeams. Some glowed with a pink hue, warm and gentle, like the light of sunset. Others were blue, soft and deep, like the glow of a lantern lit beneath the waves. Still others were white-silver, glowing faintly like fog over a sleeping sea. Between the mushroom homes were winding paths made of glowing pebbles, curling like ribbons and joining at a central plaza where the largest mushroom of all stood. Its cap so broad it cast a glowing shadow across the seabed. Tiny bubbles floated lazily through the village, catching the light like drifting stars. Sparkles of light shimmered in the water, golden, violet, silver, like dust from dreams. The whole village pulsed with quiet magic. Finnie could barely breathe. "This is beautiful." A soft movement caught his eye. Swimming gently between the glowing mushrooms were creatures he had never seen before. They shimmered faintly, their bodies delicate and translucent. Each one had a pair of small, wing-like fins extending from their sides, fluttering gracefully like butterflies made of water and light. They moved in elegant motions, sometimes floating upside down, other times gliding in spirals. "Gymnosomata," whispered the narwhal beside him, who had followed through the gate. "Angels of the sea." Finnie watched, amazed. The sea angels looked like liquid glass, some with a soft blush of pink or pale blue. They left trails of faint light in their wake, like comets swimming through a midnight sky. One of them drifted near, eyes gentle, smiling with a grace that needed no words. "You're not lost," she said softly. "You're in between." "In between what?" Finnie asked. "Between fear and wonder, between where you've been and where you're going." She twirled once in the water, and her glow brightened. "Here, we remember what light feels like, even in the deep." They swam together for a while. Finnie, the narwhal, and the sea angels past glowing windows, over bridges made of coral threads, along stone paths that curved and shimmered like secrets. Each home looked different, some tall and slender, some round and squat, each glowing with its own hue and warmth. "Every home here," said the narwhal, "is shaped by its dreamer." "What do you mean?" "We are all dreamers, Finnie. The shape of your shelter, the light it gives off, the way it welcomes others, all of it comes from the life you carry inside." Finnie thought of his sea anemone back at the coral reef. It had always swayed with him, sheltered him, accepted him. He had never thought of it as something he created, but perhaps, in a way, he had. He paused at the central plaza. The largest mushroom rose above him like a cathedral. The cap shimmered with moving lights, and beneath it stood a pool of crystal water that reflected the village upside down. He stared into it, and for the first time saw his reflection not as a small fish, but as something luminous. His orange scales shimmered, his white stripes glowed faintly, and around him were little motes of light that had followed him from every place he'd been. Memories, a shipwreck, a turtle, a swirling shell gallery, a shrimp's rainbow dance, and now this. The narwhal swam beside him, silent and present. "You carry them with you," he said, "not just in memory, but in the way you see the world now." Finnie looked up. "I don't want to forget any of it." "You won't," said the sea angel. "They've changed you. That's how you know it was real." They floated in silence. Then the narwhal turned slowly, swimming back toward the gate. "It's time," he said. Finnie followed, though his heart tugged gently. At the archway, the narwhal paused, his tusk glowing softly. "I cannot go further," he said, "but you can." Finnie nodded. "Thank you for opening the gate." The narwhal lowered his head. "Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the love of what waits on the other side." And with that, the narwhal vanished once more into the dark. Finnie looked back one last time. The village glowed like a dream behind him, sea angels fluttering between mushroom towers, bubbles rising like stars. Then, with a steady flick of his tail, he turned and swam into the unknown. And as he did, something within him shimmered too, because sometimes finding your way home means passing through the places that make you more than you were. Chapter 5, The Tower of Memories and the Singing Mermaids. The water grew warmer again, but not with heat. It was the kind of warmth that comes from memory, from something long forgotten brushing against your heart. Finnie floated gently through a narrow passage lined with ridges of soft white coral. The silence was not empty. It shimmered with echoes. The village of glowing mushrooms had vanished behind him, and ahead stretched a vast clearing of stillness. The sand beneath was white as moonlight, and rising from it were towers, dozens of them, tall, winding, and built entirely from coral as pale as bone. Each tower stretched toward the surface like a spiral of memory. Finnie swam closer, his fins barely stirring the water. The towers had no doors, only arched openings at their base, thin spiral staircases made from polished shell and carved into the coral itself, wound upward inside them like frozen whirlpools. On every tower's peak there floated a single, perfect bubble. They hovered just above the coral spires, slowly rotating. Some sparkled, some shimmered, some pulsed softly with a light that flickered like candle glow. And within each bubble, Finnie could see, in one, a child dolphin swam beside its mother, playing tag through the waves. In another, a storm raged across the sea, but inside the bubble, two seahorses clung to each other in fierce love, and in another still, a single pearl lay in a palm-shaped shell, glinting in silence, an image so simple, yet somehow filled with longing. Finnie watched in awe. He had never seen memories like this. They weren't just stories, they were feelings, made visible. They floated like dreams that had chosen not to be forgotten. A soft voice spoke behind him. Memories are not cages, little one, they are windows. Finnie turned. She was there, a mermaid. Her long, auburn hair drifted through the water like silk touched by the tide. Her scales shimmered green like kelp under sunlight, but as they reached her tail, they deepened to the color of twilight, rich purple with hints of starlight. Her eyes were large, liquid, and filled with something deeper than sorrow, something like knowing. She smiled, not with her lips but with her presence. "Hum," she said. She swam upward slowly, and Finnie followed her around the base of one tower and up a spiral shell staircase, the steps glowing beneath his fins. With each turn, the silence deepened, not heavier, but more sacred. They reached a platform near the top. The bubble floated just overhead, pulsing with light. The mermaid turned toward it, her fingers dancing delicately through the water. As she moved, the bubble responded, glowing brighter, shifting shape. Inside it, Finnie saw something familiar, a sea anemone, a cluster of clownfish, one in particular, smaller, rounder, swimming in awkward loops, trying to make his way through the wriggling tentacles. "Him," he gasped. "That's me," he whispered. The mermaid's voice was soft. "Yes, this memory belongs to you." She reached out, her hand barely brushing the edge of the bubble. The image shifted slightly. The young Finnie darted toward a sibling, nudging playfully. Their laughter rang through the water. "I forgot that moment," Finnie said. "No," the mermaid said gently. "You simply didn't carry it at the surface. But it's always been here." Her voice was like music, gentle, echoing, like wind over glass. "Why do you keep these?" Finnie asked. She looked out over the Tower Valley. "We do not keep them. We hold them, like songs held between verses. When someone forgets a moment they once treasured, we cradle it for them, not to make them remember, only to let them rest easy knowing the memory still exists." Finnie looked again at the bubble. It now shimmered with his old laughter. His heart tightened with a sweetness that almost hurt. "You're not afraid to feel it again?" he asked. The mermaid smiled. "Memories are not chains. They are mirrors. They help us see who we are." Around them, more mermaids appeared, gliding between the towers, some pausing before bubbles, others singing soft notes that resonated through the coral. Each note made the bubbles shimmer and shift, each song like a brush stroke on an invisible canvas. "They sing memories?" Finnie asked. "They do not speak," the mermaid beside him said. "They feel. The voice of the heart is often softer than words." Finnie watched as a mermaid sang to a glowing bubble above her. Inside, he saw a vast kelp forest, sunbeams pouring through, and 2 jellyfish dancing. The image wavered as her song deepened, ripples of sadness and joy echoing in the notes. "What happens if someone wants their memory back?" Finnie asked. "Then we return it. But what if they're not ready?" "Then we wait." She turned back to him, eyes luminous. "Would you like to see more?" He nodded. They descended and passed through the valley. Mermaids swam like whispers through the water, their long tails trailing sparkles, their songs interwoven. The towers were each filled with different emotions, one full of laughter, another still with grief, another buzzing with joy so fierce it nearly burst the bubble holding it. And yet, it was never overwhelming. Each tower had its silence, its place. At the edge of the village stood the tallest tower of all, its windows shaped like crescent moons, its walls woven with silver coral. At the top, a single bubble glowed not with a memory, but with light so soft it felt like dusk and dawn held in a breath. The mermaid paused before it. "This is the library," she said. "Here we keep not just memories, but maps, woven from dreams, from feelings, from the threads that guide those who are lost." Finnie looked up. Inside the bubble was not an image, but a pattern, lines of light winding across water, forming shapes that shifted and danced. They curled into spirals, into coral branches, into waves. Then, slowly, they resolved into something familiar. A reef, a sea anemone, home. He gasped. "That's where I'm from." The mermaid nodded. "The memories you carry lit the path. You're ready now." Finnie's heart surged with joy. The journey was not over, but for the first time, he could see the thread. He turned to the mermaid. "Why did you help me?" She smiled. "Because someone once sang for me when I was lost." He hesitated. "Will I forget you?" She reached out and gently touched a small, glowing bubble floating beside her. Inside, she placed the moment they shared. The tower, the laughter, the shimmer, the song. "I will remember for you," she said. Finnie swam closer, brushed a fin against the bubble. "Thank you," he whispered. She responded not with words, but with a melody so soft it was more feeling than sound. And then he left. He swam slowly from the tower, the bubble's light growing fainter behind him, the songs of the mermaids echoing like gentle bells in the distance. The sea opened ahead of him, and though he swam alone now, he carried not just a direction, but a truth that what is remembered is never truly gone, and that even in forgetting, the heart remembers where it belongs. Chapter 6. The Glowing Jellyfish Grotto. The ocean was calm now, profoundly calm, leaving the mermaid's tower of memories behind. Finnie swam deeper still, guided by an instinct he didn't fully understand but trusted with every heartbeat. The colors had faded, leaving behind only subtle shades of blue, gray, and twilight purple. The water around him was cool and quiet, as if the ocean itself had settled into deep, thoughtful meditation. Ahead lay a massive archway of stone, shadowed yet inviting, a gateway into stillness. Finnie hesitated only a moment before drifting gently through. On the other side, he found himself at the entrance of a cavern unlike anything he had ever imagined. The cavern was not dark. Rather, it glowed softly, illuminated by delicate threads of light that pierced the ocean above and descended like graceful pillars through the clear water. Finnie floated slowly forward, his fins barely moving. Here, beneath the sea, was a cathedral made from the gentle hands of time and nature. As his eyes adjusted, Finnie saw what created this shimmering, surreal luminescence. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, of jellyfish floated serenely within the cavern. They were suspended in the water like fragile paper lanterns, each pulsing softly, illuminating themselves from within. They glowed in colors so tender they seemed plucked from dreams. Violet as dusk, pale blue as starlight, soft amber like honeyed dawn, and crystal white like moonlight held captive. Each jellyfish danced gently, moved only by the most subtle currents, their delicate bodies undulating in graceful rhythms. Finnie moved among them carefully, afraid of disturbing their silent ballet. They surrounded him in layers, a living tapestry of gentle lights woven through the water. Finnie recognized some species he had heard whispered about in stories told beneath the reef. The Atala jellyfish floated gracefully, its deep red body shimmering like polished garnet. When Finnie approached, faint rings of blue neon rippled across its body, a silent but vivid signal gently warning him to maintain a respectful distance. Nearby, Halitrophy's jellies hovered like delicate glass sculptures. Their translucent bodies were adorned with branching patterns of bright pinks, blues, and whites, fireworks caught forever in their soft pulses of light. Further along the grotto, crystal jellies drifted slowly. Their completely transparent forms allowed the gentle rays of sunlight to pass through, refracting gently to produce halos of ethereal green, reminiscent of an aurora dancing silently beneath the waves. And then there were calm jellies, with shimmering lines of rainbow colors running rhythmically down their bodies like living prisms. They twirled gracefully, each pulse sending cascades of color spiraling gently outward. Finnie felt his heartbeat slow as he drifted deeper, surrounded by silent magic. It was as if the cavern itself was breathing, the gentle pulsation of light mirroring the quiet rhythm within his own chest. Here, there were no words, no sound, just the gentle whispers of motion and light. Suddenly, a gentle current shifted around him, guiding Finnie toward the very heart of the cavern. In this center space, a column of pure sunlight pierced directly through an opening in the distant surface above, illuminating everything in a soft golden glow. It felt sacred, like a place where the ocean gathered to remember its quiet truths. Finnie floated there, weightless and utterly still. The jellyfish seemed to sense his calm, their gentle pulses sinking slowly to his breathing. They began to form a delicate ring around him, a glowing circle of light that enveloped him gently, yet without touch. As he hovered within this luminous ring, Finnie felt the tension he had carried throughout his journey slowly dissolve. Like salt in warm water, he realized that for the first time in his travels, he was no longer rushing, no longer searching desperately for home. Instead, he felt a profound peace in simply being. He heard no words, but the message was clear, flowing into him through currents softer than whispers. You are enough, exactly as you are. You do not need to chase or flee. You do not need to prove or hide. Your existence itself is a quiet miracle, deserving of gentleness and care. Finnie closed his eyes, drifting inward. Memories appeared softly behind his eyelids. His family among the anemones, the playful dances in sunlight, the gentle advice of wise friends he'd made along the way. Each memory surfaced quietly, recognized with gratitude, and then gently allowed to drift onward. As the silence deepened, Finnie began to understand something profound. The ocean was teaching him stillness, not as emptiness, but as fullness. He was learning to listen, truly listen, to his heart's quiet voice beneath the noise and movement. Silence, he thought, is not absence, it's presence. Presence to myself, presence to this moment. Slowly, the jellyfish began to drift outward, creating a wider circle around him. They pulsed gently, synchronized perfectly, each one a beacon of soft reassurance. Finnie opened his eyes again, watching them with quiet awe. "Thank you," he whispered softly, his voice barely stirring the water. One of the jellyfish, a soft lavender mauve stinger, drifted slightly closer, glowing gently as if responding to his gratitude. Its gentle illumination felt like a smile, warm, tender, reassuring. Finnie knew it was time to continue. His home still called softly, a distant, comforting whisper, but he knew now that he carried this quiet within himself. This sanctuary of stillness would always be accessible, no matter where he traveled or how stormy the waters ahead might become. Before he moved on, he paused once more, looking around the cavern, committing every gentle pulse of light to memory. He bowed his head slightly in silent thanks, then slowly turned to the cavern's opposite exit. As he swam away, the jellyfish remained floating peacefully behind, their quiet glow illuminating his path forward. He emerged from the cavern feeling changed, deeper somehow, more centered, more at peace, carrying the silent wisdom that the quiet had granted him. Ahead, the ocean stretched wide and endless. Finnie knew not exactly what awaited, but he felt no fear, only trust. Trust in himself, trust in the journey, and trust in the quiet voice now whispering gently in his heart. "You are exactly where you are meant to be. Breathe, trust, let go." As Finnie left the grotto behind, he swam slowly toward the distant blue. Home felt closer now, perhaps not in distance, but in heart, because in this cavern of luminous silence, he had found not only beauty but also the profound understanding that the greatest journeys always bring you back to yourself. And he was ready now, at last, for whatever came next. Final chapter, Reunion at the Coral Reef. Finnie could feel it before he saw it, a subtle shift in the current, a familiar scent in the water, a pattern in the way sunlight scattered above. Something deep in his body stirred, like an old song finding its melody again. He was close. He swam faster, not out of urgency but anticipation, his little heart pounding with something too big for words. The water grew warmer, crisper, richer with life. Every fin beat carried him toward a memory he had almost let go. Then suddenly, the sea opened before him, and there it was, home. The coral reef stretched like a jeweled kingdom beneath him, bursting with life, motion, and color. Coral branches of all shapes and hues, amber, rose, violet, jade, waved gently in the currents like a welcoming parade. Shoals of tiny fish darted through the maze of coral like stardust. Above, shafts of golden light poured through the surface like sunlight streaming through stained glass. Finnie froze, his fins stilled, his breath caught, It was more beautiful than he remembered. And then his eyes found it, the sea anemone, nestled among the coral gardens. Its long, ribbon-like arms swayed as if dancing in slow motion. It was there, just as it had always been. It hadn't changed, but he had. The sight of it struck something deep in him, something ancient and tender. A lump rose in his throat, and his fins trembled with emotion. And then, "Finnie?" The voice shot through the water like lightning. A flash of bright blue burst from behind a coral arch, and there she was, Blue Tang, his old friend, his childhood shadow, the one he'd chased Bubbles with, the one who never stopped believing he'd come back. Before he could even respond, she collided with him in a swirl of bubbles and joy, looping excited circles around him with her signature whirl. I knew it, you're really here," she cried. Finnie tried to speak, but his voice choked. All he could do was smile, a wide, tearful, utterly disbelieving smile. He spun with her, laughter and relief bubbling up from his chest like a long-held breath finally released. "I missed you," he whispered. Blue Tang beamed. Everyone did. As if summoned by the sound of her voice, other figures began to emerge from the reef. And then they came. Bright streaks of orange and white swam from behind coral spires, from beneath anemone arms, from crevices Finnie had once played in. One by one, the clownfish appeared, his family, his kin. Their eyes widened as they saw him. For a moment, the world stood still. Then, "Finnie," cried one of them, his younger brother, merely identical but with a chip on his dorsal fin. Another gasped, "It's really him, he's back," voices echoed. And in an instant, they were all around him. Fins reached out, bodies twirled and brushed against his. There were no words, only a tangle of bubbles and motion and tears and laughter. They circled him, swam beside him, above him, beneath him. Finnie was home. He was embraced, not by arms, but by motion, not by words, but by presence. His mother nudged him with her snout, a silent question in her eyes. He nodded, and she pulled him close. His siblings crowded around, touching fins, spiraling joyfully. Finnie's vision blurred with tears. He didn't try to stop them. The emotion surged in his chest like a tide breaking free. All the loneliness, all the longing, all the wondering if he'd ever make it back. All of it flooded through him, not in sadness, but in sheer, overwhelming joy. He began to cry, not out of pain, but because joy sometimes spills from the heart when it grows too full to hold. "I thought I was lost forever," he said softly. His mother's voice was gentle. "You were always on your way home." Blue Tang stayed close, watching the reunion with eyes glistening. She knew this wasn't her moment, but she was part of it. Finnie turned to her. "Thank you," he said, his voice catching. She smiled. "I just waited. You did the swimming." Together, they drifted toward the sea anemone. Finnie paused before it. His anemone, it had sheltered him from predators, from storms, from the weight of the world. It had been both castle and cradle, hiding place and launching pad. He reached out a fin. The anemone responded, curling one long tendril around him like an embrace. He swam forward into its swaying arms, and it welcomed him as if no time had passed. Everything softened. The reef shimmered with golden afternoon light, casting long shadows over the coral and filling the water with peace. His family gathered close. Blue Tang curled beside him, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Finnie exhaled completely. He felt whole. His journey had changed him. He had met turtles who remembered the stars, crabs who wore memories on their backs, shrimp who danced with colors, mermaids who guarded forgotten dreams, jellyfish who taught silence as sanctuary. And all of it, every encounter, every challenge, every quiet moment, had brought him back here, to this, to belonging, to love. The reef began to quiet as the sun dipped lower above the surface. A hush settled over the coral, a lullaby woven from rippling light and slow tides. Finnie nestled deeper into the anemone's warm embrace. His mother brushed her fin across his back. Blue Tang settled nearby, watching the last rays of sun filter down through the water. "I'm tired," Finnie murmured. "You've come a long way," his mother whispered. He closed his eyes. The ocean cradled him, and slowly, gently, he drifted into sleep. A sleep without fear, a sleep without questions, a sleep filled with the sound of home. And so, the little clownfish's journey came to rest, not with fireworks or triumph, but with reunion, quiet, and peace. And somewhere in the deep, blue calm, a small light shimmered softly, not to be seen, but to be felt. You're home now. The sea remembers. Rest, little one. You've made it back. Thank you for joining me on this peaceful journey. If this story brought you comfort, don't forget to subscribe to Dreamer's Realm. There's a new path waiting for you in the next video, and I'll be right here, gently guiding you again. Good night, my dear dreamers.